Luber.
I got nothing left to say. So let's get like sort of the big elephant out of the room for anybody who was here last year or who knows about this event last year, right? So last year the keynote speaker was Michael Dubin, who was the founder of Dollar Shave Club, and about 1 week after he spoke here, he sold the company for $1 billion. So that is the only reason I'm doing this. Pay attention to the news next week. Seriously though, we didn't have anything like this back when I was here. In fact, at the very tail end, I graduated as a JD MBA in 06. There was some entrepreneurship classes, but there was nothing like this. I do remember my last semester that Mark Cuban was here and he spoke. And I don't remember much about that except that he cursed a lot. So I was like, if I ever start talking, then I'm gonna be like, fuck that. Like, I'm just like Mark Cuban. That becomes part of this. Yesterday I spoke at a high school in Marietta. Marietta goes really far up there. I lived in Atlanta 15 years. I've never been that far up. I've never done this in the other talks, but they seem to really enjoy when I pass around the CAF championship ring. So if I get this back, we'll pass this around during that. There were a lot of high school kids who had that on their Snapchat yesterday. All right, so we'll jump right in, right? All right. These are two pairs of the Air Jordan 4. They're both black. They both have some light accents. And the Jordan 4 retails for about $200. But on the secondary market, at places like eBay or StockX, the one on the left resells for $230. The one on the right, $23,000. And these aren't, this guy's shaking his head, right? These aren't the only two black Jordan 4s, right? There's this pair for $700, and this pair for $600, and these three. And there's about 50 different Jordan 4s, and there's 31 different Jordan models, and there's a whole lot of other brands. And as Andrew mentioned, last time we counted, 2015, there were over 9 million pairs of sneakers resold in the United States alone at a value of over $1.2 billion US, about $6 billion globally. And this is the whole thing. On one hand, an example of just the incredulous nature of sneakers, right? Shoes that cost more than a car. On the other, just the fundamental economics of it all. The resale sneaker market is just supply and demand. This is Econ 101, BBA, day one, 1996 for me, right? It couldn't be any more simple. The shoe on the left, there were hundreds of thousands of pairs of this released in the market. The shoe on the right, there were only 10 pairs released, and this was a collaboration with M&M. So supply was non-existent and demand's through the roof. Maybe you should sell it for more than $23,000. Right? But what's crazier than the fact that some shoes sell for as much as a car is the fact that these same basic economic principles, the same transparency of supply and demand, doesn't exist anywhere else in our day-to-day e-commerce experience, the way that we buy and sell anything online. Toasters, bikes, it doesn't matter. What we experience as consumers is something more akin to supply and deceive. And here's some examples, and these are all real, all right? This is a listing on Amazon for a cat litter box. And I don't have a cat, but $27 sounds like a pretty reasonable price. But if you look closely, the list price is $2,159. This is real, right? And by the way, there's only one left of this unbelievable deal to save $2,000 on a cat litter box, right? Dog treats, right? $8, dog treats, sounds right. $822 list price, all right? Andrew mentioned that I gave a TED Talk a while ago, and the theme of that was this, right? $20,000 sneakers. Perhaps the theme of this is something more akin to this, right? Except it's certainly not Pet Supply, and it's not just Amazon, right? Here's an example from eBay, and to make it apples to apples, sneakers. This is the search results for a shoe called the Jordan 12 Wings from the week after it released. There were 1,200 results, and these are the top 4 listings. 25,000, 25,000, 18,000, 15,000. Okay. From the Jordan 4 M&M, we know that some shoes really do sell for that amount of money. And if you were to scroll through all the listings, you would see that the top 82 listings are all being sold for at least $2,000. But because we track the value of sales on eBay. We can tell you that the average price of shoes that actually sold is only $932. And the fact that most that any one of these actually sold for was only $1,600. So there's a huge disconnect between what things are listed for, their list price, or what people are asking for things, versus what people actually pay for that. And we don't have any of that transparency into that data into what consumer goods actually sell for. So if you're starting to guess where this is going, the question is, right, how does this, and the transparency of the secondary sneaker market, how does that solve all of this? The answer, of course, right, is this. We'll get to more of that. But I think it's worth, notwithstanding that Andrea stole most of it, to back up a little bit and tell you a little bit about sort of me and where we got to. It's all good. My part's much more interesting. So, okay. To start, I'll put this up because gratuitous sneaker pictures are always fun. So, BBA started here in '95. JD MBA started to run 3 other companies before this, and none of those businesses had anything to do with sneakers. And I worked for Alston & Bird, and I worked for IBM, and I almost intentionally avoided starting any businesses related to sneakers, because I've collected sneakers since I was like 8, right? So this was an intentional separation of like business and pleasure. It wasn't entirely separation, right? I occasionally applied for jobs, and so, you know. I never worked for Nike. I've spoken at Nike twice, and both times I've used this slide. It goes over really well there. I don't really use this when I speak at Adidas. But the point was, right, so I've started to run a bunch of companies, and I didn't want to create a business that was just an excuse to play with sneakers, right? Until I found a really good excuse to play with sneakers, or at least sneaker data. So I went to work for IBM, which I never thought I would do, and that's another story. But I go to work for IBM as a strategy consultant and doing a ton of data work. And I really quickly went from, I thought I knew a lot about data, to, now I'm a freaking expert because you have to be. And so I'm doing all this data work, and I thought, I wonder if I could hold up some sneaker data, just to play with for my own amusement, just to see what you can do with it, right? Because the first thing you do when you go take a corporate job, you start working on a side business, right? So, we figured out, I reached out to former startup partners, figured out how to bring in eBay data, which is where the majority of the sneaker resale market was happening at the time. This was like early 2012. And created a company called Campus, which was we called it a sneakerhead data company. This was a price guide, right? This was Kelley Blue Book, Beckett for sneakers, figuring out what are sneakers actually worth, right? How do you get to that $932 from the list of eBay sales instead of $25,000 or $2,000? And so for the next couple of years, I was doing this business on the side, and people in the sneaker community started using it, and blogs started picking up our data, and we created a blog that was kind of like Freakonomics for sneakers, and I was spending a lot of time talking to everybody in the sneaker industry to try to figure out, all right, what is this? How do I leave IBM? How do I go do this job? And I started previous startups, one while single, one while married with no kids, and this one while married with 1 kid. And I talked to everybody in the sneaker industry, Nike, eBay, Foot Locker, you name it. And there was never really a good fit. And then one day I get a totally random email from 2 guys who work for Dan Gilbert, who is the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and Quicken Loans, and about 130 other companies, and pretty much the entire city of Detroit. And Dan's got no ties to the sneaker industry, right? It's been 2 years, I still can't even get him to wear sneakers, right? But you take every call. So I talked to these guys, and it's like word for word the exact same conversation I had 1,000 times. I didn't think anything of it. And then 2 days later, they call me back, and they say, we definitely want to do this business. We definitely want to work with you. We'd like to fly you to Cleveland to go to a game and meet Dan. I was living in Philly at the time, right? Well, first half of that statement, I'm like, whatever, everybody says they're going to do shit. Second half, I'm like, absolutely, you can fly me to a game, right? I'm a huge basketball fan. I'm telling my wife, my friends, nothing about campus, everything. I get to go to a game with the owner of the team, right? And these guys are like, it's short notice. This was like the week before Easter of 2015, right? So these guys are like, it's short notice. Can you come on Easter Sunday? I was like, I'm Jewish. Like, put me on a plane. Like, let's go, right? So, the caveat to this is that my wife was 39 weeks pregnant with our second kid. A couple people have kids, right? Understand that. So the plan was to fly in, go to the game that afternoon, and fly home that night. So I get there, get to the game, I make small talk during the game, and then after the game we go back in this like private owner's room, and it's Dan, and it's two guys and me, I'm talking about me and Campus and sneakers and all this. When I started Campus in early 2012, I had this roadmap, this one piece of paper I used to take to all of these meetings, and it was really simple, right? There were only 3 things on the page, right? The first one was a price guide, which we already were, right? The second was this concept of sneaker portfolios, right? If you know the value of one pair of sneakers, then I can tell you the value of your whole sneaker collection, and you look at that data the way you look at a stock portfolio, right? We've since actually created it. So here's someone's sneaker portfolio. You can see this person has 670 pairs at a value of $250,000, right? The math is really easy, right, once you know the value of one asset. And so the idea was, very logical next step. If you have asset pricing, if you have portfolio pricing, then you create an actual stock market for sneakers. And that was the idea. But it was a very pie-in-the-sky idea. I'm not a developer, but it was what I thought you could do with the data. And so I used to take this piece of paper to every one of these meetings, Nike, eBay, Foot Locker, and everybody said, wow, that's really cool. But what we want to do is this. And we want to take your data and do this, this, this in our business. And fair enough. I didn't think Nike was going to change their whole business and build a stock market. No problem. I share it with Dan and his two guys, and they look at me with like pure shock, and it doesn't register why. And one of them takes out a piece of paper and is like, yeah, we have one of those that is exactly what we want to build, a stock market for sneakers. And I was like, oh. So the craziest backstory here is that there's maybe one other guy in the whole world trying to do the exact same thing at the exact same time, and it happens to be one of the most successful business people in the history of the world, right? Like, what the fuck? Like, he's got no ties to the sneaker industry. It's been 2 years, every home game we're trying to get on LeBron's. But I later found out he's always had this bigger idea around a stock market of things. That you could buy or sell anything, and you could connect buyers and sellers the exact same way that the stock market works. And then he sees his 15-year-old son buying and selling sneakers on eBay. And takes a closer look at that and says, well, that's a pretty crappy market leader, and that'd be a perfect place to build a stock market. So he goes out, he puts together a team. It was another startup that was working within his ecosystem, product guy, 2 developers, and a designer, and they start working on it. And they get a month into it and say, well, crap, we need a sneaker guy. Who's a sneaker guy that's going to help us run the sneaker stock market? So they go out, they do some research, they find Campus, they find me. Turns out the sneaker guy's also trying to build a sneaker stock market. Has also started 3 other startups and worked for IBM as a JD MBA. It wasn't just like some random guy. So it was this crazy serendipity of everything I was looking for and everything they were looking for, and all this is happening in the locker room at the Cavs game on Easter Sunday. So at this point, Dan's like, well, we got to go out to Detroit to meet everyone, see everything that's going on. It's Sunday. I was like, my league's pretty light. I'm sure I can come whenever. So his assistant takes out his calendar. He's like, how about like Tuesday or Wednesday? Dan's like, why don't you just come back on our plane right now? I'm like, okay. I'd never been on a private plane before that day. So I text my wife, please don't go into labor, right? Text IBM, not show up at work tomorrow, sorry. So we fly to Detroit. I'd never been to Detroit, never even thought about Detroit. I was literally on the plane, was like, I don't know, I'm going to see Isaiah Thomas. Like, I had no idea what was going on, right? So we stay there, spent all day in Detroit, tour of all his businesses, the city, meet everyone else involved in the company. Monday night in Dan's office, he said, listen, we'd like you to stay another day to keep talking. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Text my wife, I'm like, please don't fucking kill me, right? Text IBM, I literally wore the same clothes for 3 days straight, right? Finally, at the end of the day, Tuesday, back in Dan's office, like, listen, we think this is the right fit. We want to buy your company. We want you to come here and run it. They let me get home. I get home at like 1 a.m. Tuesday night. My wife's waiting up for me. I walk in the door. I was like, yo, I think we're moving to Detroit. And she's like, what the fuck? I thought we went to Cleveland. So that's actually the shortest possible version. It was a really crazy run-up of me doing this on the side for a couple years, and then having this crazy luck to run into someone who had the exact same vision and the resources to go after that big idea, right? And so we built it, right? We've created StockX, which is a stock market of things. I moved to Detroit and moved my family there. I was the 5th person working there at the time. We now have 40. And the really crazy part about this is that, look, he still runs the Cavs and Quicken and 130 other companies, but proportionately, he spends more time with us than anyone because he was a true co-founder in every sense of the word, right? He had the same idea independently. But the big idea is really big. And there's some really interesting parallel between Quicken Loans, which is how Dan made his money and really pays for everything else, which essentially invented online mortgages. So back in 1999, people thought it was crazy to buy mortgages online and transmit your personal financial information. But today, it's very logical to transmit the same information thousands of times, to make the same decision thousands of times, and do that. And there's something very logical about being able to leverage the internet and the way that that works to be able to connect buyers and sellers the exact same way the stock market connects buyers and sellers. And so that's what we're doing, right? So we keep saying it's sort of a stock market of things, but what that means is, and we're about to go from sort of fun stories on private planes to maybe a little more sort of educational and deeper into what this means, but it's what's called a live bid-ask market, right? And most of you, I don't have to explain what the stock market, how it works, right? But buyers place bids, how much they're willing to pay for something. And sellers place asks, how much they're willing to sell it for. And when a bid and ask meet, the transaction happens automatically. Right? It creates an anonymous, transparent, and authentic market. And I'm going to say that again because these are the three tenets of what a stock market is and what it means to connect buyers and sellers this way that doesn't exist outside of the actual market, right? It's anonymous, transparent, and authentic. We'll start with the fact that if you're buying a share of Apple stock, you get essentially a digital certificate for representing your ownership in that stock. Right? But if you're buying consumer goods, there's an additional layer of actually receiving that physical product. And so we have this additional layer of authenticity that doesn't exist in the actual market. Right? In the case of sneakers, there's a lot of fake sneakers in the market. So every pair of shoes sold on StockX gets shipped to us in Detroit, and we physically authenticate it, and we send it out to the buyer. If you're a 15-year-old kid, and you have no idea what a bid or an ask means, and you don't care, this is the greatest value we offer by far, right? But for us, for the market, for the integrity of the market, this is just table stakes. This is 100% necessary. If there's even the slightest doubt that what you are buying is not going to be real, not going to be what you think you are buying, it changes your perception of value. It changes how much you're willing to pay for something or how much you're willing to sell it for if you're not 100% certain. And so for that reason, this is an absolute requirement for us to do this. I want to basically take a pause for a second and recap some of the stuff that we've talked about in terms of what it means to be a stock market of things and bid-ask. And we'll let someone a lot more interesting do that. So I'm going to play this video. The first thing to note is that when we released that video, one of the editors at TechCrunch wrote this. They're still calling us Campless. But this is the best introduction video since Point is, right, $1 billion next week, right? But Dubin didn't win a Crunchy, right? We won an award for best startup video. Look at Snapchat, Lyft, Slack, and us. So, look, this was a phenomenal video, and we got a lot of use out of it. And obviously Wale was in it, and Hassan Minaj from The Daily Show, and a guy with a beard is a big sneaker YouTube guy. And the video is a lot of fun, but it really just talks about the what, right? What is the stock market things and how it works. It doesn't at all talk about the why, and why this is a better way to buy or sell anything, right? So I'm going to use the last part of this to go a little bit deeper into the why, and then we can do Q&A about sort of any part of this, right? So it comes back to the three tenets and start with anonymity, right? So in every other consumer marketplace, eBay, Amazon, etc., there's so much noise and so much time and effort wasted around who the seller is. Who is this person? Where are they located? How many reviews do they have? You know, how many pairs have they sold? But if we're selling a commodity, right? And for sneakers, we only allow the sale of brand new or unworn sneakers because the whole thing is about commoditizing the product and creating a single product the same way you have a single stock ticker, right? If we're doing that and we're physically authenticating it, what difference does it make who the seller is? When you buy a share of Apple stock in the New York Stock Exchange, there's an actual seller on the other end of that specific trade. But you don't know who that is, and you don't care. All you care about is the price that you pay for it. And that's the last tenet, right? Actually, it's around transparency of price. transparency into what things sell for, back to the examples from Amazon and kitty litter and the Jordan 12 wings, right? And the transparency in the process to get to what you pay for something. And that's really important. And we're going to go back through this sort of bid-ask and what that means, because that's why the stock market has been the most efficient form of commerce for hundreds of years. And so to go deeper into that, into transparency and what that means, we're actually going to go through a product page on StockX. And now this is going to start to feel a little bit like a tutorial, right? But that's not the purpose. The purpose is to unlock the bigger picture by understanding what it means to connect buyers and sellers the way the stock market connects buyers and sellers. So this is a product page from the same shoe we looked at earlier, the Jordan 12 wings. And we saw the eBay example of the 1,223 listings that came back. But if you buy a share of Apple stock, there's one ticker symbol for Apple stock, right? There's not thousands of people that all have individual listings for Apple. And so in the same way, there's one product page on StockX. And like the stock market, every bid and every ask is all in one place. Everything is in the same place, and that's what creates transparency in what people are willing to pay for it and what people are willing to sell it for. And yeah, at first glance, this might seem maybe a bit more confusing than your typical e-commerce page, which probably has one button for buy. But it's the difference between having 1,223 pages with one button or one page with 3 buttons. So I'm going to walk through quickly what those 3 buttons are, right? So the first, in the upper left-hand corner, we can see the last sale. The last sale someone actually paid for this shoe was $800. We can click the View All Sales link, and you can see every pair that anyone's ever bought of this, right? This is Yahoo Finance for sneakers, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. And we pull on data from every other website too, not just StockX. So where in any other consumer marketplace do you have real data to make better buying and selling decisions about what you're going to buy? That's what this is. So the first of those decisions is buying. And in the middle of the page, you can see lowest ask. Again, ask is a listing for sale. Lowest ask, $849. So you can buy this sneaker right now for $849. And if you click that View All Asks in the middle, and you can see every ask that's listed. You can see it for that size, $849, $875, down to $1150. There's about 15 asks listed for sale there. But here's the thing. You can only buy the pair for $849. There's a pair listed for $1,100. Even if you wanted to, you can't buy that one for $1,100. That's how the market works. The lowest ask sells first. Compare that to the eBay example, where there were 82 listings being sold for at least $2,000 before you got to any of what the true market price for that is. Look, if we stopped here, if this was the end of this, the end of StockX in the presentation, this would still be an unbelievable improvement over the experience compared to eBay and other places in terms of transparency and efficiency. But it would really just be a reorganization of the same basic process we have today, which is that sellers have something they want to sell and buyers choose to buy it or not. The big idea starts to come when we look at how you sell something into a stock market. And so the last thing on the right here is this sell button. Highest bid, $750. That means that someone is willing to pay $750 for this shoe right now. And this is tied to their credit card or their PayPal. This is a live bid. And if we click View All Bids, we can see there's 3, $750, $600, and $499. So think about that. You can sell a pair of shoes right now for $750. You don't have to listen to ask. You don't have to write a description. You don't have to upload pictures. You could be the biggest sneaker seller in the entire world and never once list anything for sale ever. Right? For lack of a less cliche way to say it, this sell button, this is the truly revolutionary part of the whole thing. If you leave here with 2 words about StockX, it's sell now. Sell now does not exist in the e-commerce world. If you want to sell a share of Apple stock, you don't have to go list it for sale and hope someone comes and buys it. No, there are standing bids all the time at the market, and you go sell now at the market price. You can sell a share of Apple stock right now as easy as clicking one button. And that's what we're trying to do for e-commerce, to make that same level of transparency and bring everything together, because it's a standardized product and because everything comes down to one place. This is the big idea. This is creating a completely new form of commerce by standardizing it and allowing it to do that. This is what we mean by a stock market of things. And that's a big idea. But take that 2 or 3 steps further. What's a stock market if not a variable pricing model that moves real time with the market? That's all it is. So this works really well for sneakers, and we're about to launch watches and handbags, and you have these products that have this big resale premium that sell for a lot of money. You have collectors and you have shoes that cost $23,000. But the hypothesis is that anything that's not already a purely commoditized product, right, like a plastic water bottle, that there's essentially infinite supply of a plastic water bottle, and anything that's not a unique one-of-a-kind item, like a work of art or house, anything else, there's some finite quantity of supply that exists of that product in the world. And if you understand the demand side of the equation, if you can create it where people can bid and understand what people are willing to pay for that, well, then you can function like a stock market. And you can be able to have this level of transparency and efficiency in how it works. And so take this to the next level, right? Winter's over. So all winter coats are 40% off on Nike.com. I don't know, I'm making that up, right? But maybe they don't have to be 40% off. There's some finite quantity of winter coats that exist. And so if you understand the demand side of the equation, some people might bid 10% off, and some people might bid 20%, and you could step down, and you could minimize the amount of discounts or maximize the revenue because you understand what people are willing to pay for that. Listen, pricing is the most inefficient part of every business in every industry because it's a binary construct, right? I have this widget. I will sell it to you for $100. Yes or no? Do you want to buy it? Maybe you're willing to pay $110 for that, but I'll never know. And maybe you're willing to pay $90. But I lost your sale and I lost your $10 because it's a binary construct around pricing. That's what we're trying to change. Not just how people buy and sell sneakers, but pricing in general for everything. So that's a little bigger. And take it one step further. This is the homepage. Sorry. So it gets to the point where this is the construct that we're looking at, right? Where if Amazon is the largest marketplace for storefronts and eBay is the largest marketplace for auctions, right? That we want to be the largest marketplace for stock market commerce to be able to do that. And back to my point earlier around Dan and online mortgages, there's something that is very logical about this. And we joke, hopefully not jinxing ourselves, that like maybe we'll be like the Friendster of stock market commerce, right? That we're coming out there. We still have to execute this and build a business. But there's something really logical about being able to do that. And so the last sort of big idea, if you take a look, this is our homepage. And at the bottom here, and I'll bring this up in the middle, there's an actual stock ticker that runs across the bottom, and it moves, and it's real data. It's whatever the last sale is for those shoes. And we've created indices because what's a stock market without indices? A Jordan Index, a Nike, and Yeezy. And listen, this is really a brand play, right? This is fun to have data that flows through and make it look and feel like the stock market, right? But maybe Dan Gilbert wants to take a position on 100 pairs of the next Air Jordan that releases. But he doesn't want to have them shipped to his house and then have to rebox them and ship them back to StockX. So stay with us at our trading floor. And we can use that inventory the same way a bank uses your money. And when he wants to close out his position, he closes out his position. And now all of a sudden, you start to create day trading on top of consumer goods. And Andrew mentioned the LeBron 14 that we put in the Cavs championship box with the ring. There were 46 pairs that were sold on StockX. 7 of those people chose to resell that product. And they did so by leaving it with us. And they resold those and made thousands of dollars without ever taking possession of that product. Now, we don't do that on a day-to-day basis today, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in like SEC compliance territory and a whole lot of lawyers, but that's where this goes, right? And look, the resale sneaker market is $1 billion US, $6 billion globally. Like, that's not sexy from a global investment standpoint. But if you have some fraction of the $5 trillion e-commerce market and then put trading on top of that, well, then all of a sudden, maybe this isn't just a brand play, right? Maybe this is actually indices that you start to peg investments against. I don't know, right? That's a big idea. And we get to go and do that. And by the way, notice I haven't talked really about anything about what we've accomplished at StockX and what we've done. And that's intentional, right? We do a lot of public speaking and out talking, and really it's about talking about the big idea and going and do this. But we launched 13 months ago, and this has been phenomenal. And sneakers works really well, and we're about to launch watches and handbags. and we're trying to do more IPOs and release more products directly on the StockX to figure this out. So with that said, I will stop. I will put up this picture of my daughter because I like to leave that up for Q&A. So that's it.